And again, we welcome you and tell us about your organization and your work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys. Greatly appreciate being here. So Safe Space organization is something that is kind of one of its first. Our goal is to reinvent the way we look at mental health and the way that we address mental health, right? But in doing so, we're breaking down a stigma. We're reinventing the rules in a lot of ways, and we have a lot to break through when doing that. And so the word that continues to come back is safety, a feeling of safety, which is hence the name Safe Space. And safety feels different for everyone. For me, it's a feeling of my senses, right? I can sense it when I walk in a room. I can feel it with other individuals. I pick it up, it's energy. And so how do you create that in a space? And so probably it's been 3 years now. This concept came to me one evening at my dining room table, because my personal story is I have struggled with an eating disorder until about the age of 10. And my story is no different in many ways than a lot of people. We all have trauma, right? It affects us. We call them big T's or little T's, right? It affects everybody with varying degrees, depending on when it happened, usually in your childhood or as you get older, but it affects everybody differently. We express it differently. We deal with our traumas differently. And so for me, it was through food. Food was safety for me, was comfort for me. And as a child, it was the only things I could get my hands on, right? To control what was happening around me. So I struggled with an eating disorder until my 30s, and I was in and out of treatment facilities. There was nothing really ever local. We didn't have much here in New York State, and so I had to go elsewhere. Nobody really knew what an eating disorder was back, in the late 80s, early 90s, or how to deal with it. And so I kept coming back to Syracuse, and I was like, I'm failing because I'm not doing this right. I'm not getting better. What they're telling me is working is not working. I was on every medicine. I tried every talk therapy method out there, and I was like, why am I not getting better? And so sitting at my dining room table about 5 years ago, this concept came to me, and I was like, there is something about rehab or inpatient therapy or any that is safe, right? And for me, it was being surrounded by people that understood what I was going through and having a common language to be able to describe what I was going through and feeling heard, feeling validated in my feelings instead of, no, you're wrong, right? And so I was like, so how do we bring that to a community level? Because as humans, we crave community, and you guys must see that every day, right? That's what a church is, that it's that community. And through my recovery, that was a massive part. That was a massive piece. I crave that community. I crave that music. I crave that higher power. Like, those were all important steps. And so I laid it out there, and I developed this organization that basically allows people to build a toolbox of coping modalities, because we are not taught how to identify emotions in our bodies. We are not taught how to express what we are feeling and ask for what we need as children. I am a second grade special needs teacher, and we don't teach our children that even today. And so when we become adults, we develop all of these other modalities to process what we're feeling. And it comes through addiction. It comes through suicide. It comes through these methods because we have no other option. We get to this breaking point, right? That we just want the pain to stop. And because we don't have those tools, we go to what works, which is addiction for a lot of people. And so what Safe Space is it allows people to build their toolbox. So we offer, not yet, but we will, modalities. So art and music and dance and drumming and creative outlets and community. And then we also have a variety of support groups, because for me, normalizing coming together to process and to work through hard emotions and hard times in life is the way to do it. And so community, and so really growing this idea of what we think mental health looks like and what we think fixes mental health, and making it on a community level. So yeah, so that's kind of where we are. This concept grew, and so now we found a space. It's about a 5,000 square foot space in Syracuse, and we're currently raising funds and building that space out so we can make it actually a home.
When you say a home, you mean just a gathering
Yeah,
place?
like a space, a home for safe space, right?
Understood.
Because right now we're working throughout the community. We're offering support groups through churches and through libraries, and we are pushing out to local providers who are doing this work already. Our goal is to just have it all under one roof.
So you're helping people develop their own safe spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good way of putting it. The goal is that there will be the actual location, right? But people developing these own safe spaces, their own safe space within themselves, right? I think that's the goal, is understanding what's going on, understanding feelings and emotions. And a lot of that stuff has been there for a really long time, you know? So yeah, just educating. We have 5 pillars that support our organization, and it's community, it's connection, it's safety, it's education. I named 6. It's community, it's safety, it's education, and empowerment. And so those were all really important to me. This process should be empowering. We work on our physical health, it's empowering, right? Like this mental health lens, like we have to shift it from a shameful process to something that that really is amazing. You're choosing to do the work. So yeah,
Well,
so it's a movement as well as a space, in my opinion.
years ago, we were doing a summer vacation Bible school with our church and St. Francis de Sales, which is even farther down in the city of Utica. And we had these kids down there, and they were talking about safety. And I remember the person that was leading that day said, and how many of you, know what it feels like to be safe? And not every child in that class, I mean, these are little kids, like 4, 5, 6 years old. And it was amazing how many little ones did not feel safe ever.
It's heartbreaking.
And what do we do about that as a society? I mean, this is not right.
No, I agree. And unfortunately, those are the wounds, those they say that those beliefs and those traumas happen before the age of 7. And they're the ones that get ingrained in us, right? So if you don't know what safety is before the age of 7, it stays with you. It really does. And that's when you start to seek things that make you feel safe, or things that at least quiet you down inside. Like that's what addictions do, right? They quiet down the chaos that's happening inside, or they provide a safety net. So yeah, and unfortunately what we just witnessed with COVID, right? Our children experienced a large amount of fear because we were all scared, let's be honest, but they were a part of that, and they experienced this fear that their brains can't comprehend. And so it's why we're seeing the anxiety that we're seeing. It's why we're seeing the social effects that it had on those kiddos. So we've got a crop of kids now that have experienced something that we can't say we have, but we're seeing it in schools. As a teacher, I've never seen it this bad. I've never seen it this bad with our younger kiddos, with our kindergarten, first, second graders. So it's a good question. How do we give safety, right? How do we teach that? Especially when the home environment is not safe.
Right. Now, how do we create the safe spaces where people can feel?
It's a good question. For me, and what we're building, you experience safety in your senses. So it's all related back to your nervous system. So for me, it's the lighting, it's the colors in the room, it's the sounds, like if there's music. It's it's hard to put into words, honestly, because I think it looks different for everybody. Um, but I also think it's the people that encompass that space, right? You know, when you meet somebody, if you get a vibe off them, if you get a feeling of safety, if you get a feeling of, okay, I can open up to this person, you know. But children are much easier to access than adults are, in my opinion, because they haven't had years piled on years of things that have happened to them, you know. So they want that, they seek that. I honestly think it's the adults that are uncomfortable with that, you know. So yeah, I've taken it into I guess I've approached it with how my senses feel in a room. I guess that's the best way to describe it, but I haven't put that into words before.
Tracy, I'm listening to you, and there's something I've been doing a lot of thinking about lately. Understanding where you are coming from and where your community is coming from. How do we not objectify you? How do we look at the community that you're building here as a community of deserving human beings, and not a problem to be solved? How do we make it human?
That's a fantastic question, right? I think it takes a level of vulnerability on your part too, right? And I think that's the problem with talk therapy sometimes, is you sit in front of somebody, or when somebody comes to see you, right? And they're pouring their heart out to you, and you're just like, yeah, you know, like if you're giving nothing in return. And I realize there needs to be a level of professionalism, right? Which is, but if you are not showing any vulnerability yourself, if you're not putting any of your stuff out there sort of to match their vulnerability level, they feel that. And it feels like, whoo, I'm throwing it all out here. Nobody's receiving it. Nobody's saying, I know how you feel. Like, I've been through something similar, or, you know, nobody's matching it. Right. And I think that's where support groups are so, like, it's different because all those people have been through it, right? So they're all like, yes, like I can understand that. My story's a little bit different, but I can relate. So I really believe it's a level of vulnerability that you've got to match, and it in a way that you're both still comfortable with it, because there needs to be a professionalism with it. But giving a little sometimes speaks volumes and just allows them to continue to open up.
I'm just, I'm thinking about a lot of things in my experience as parent. I'm also a university campus chaplain, so I work with 18 to 22-year-olds a lot. And I am here in this context of working with seniors, the aging population. And just to add to the conversation, I think it's very complex because it's contextual. A month ago, I was here at work and my phone just kept ringing off the hook. And what it was my son. My son's school was calling to inform us that There was a murder-suicide in the Baldwinsville Central School District area. And my son knew the child and that whole thing, right? So I remember leaving work because I just wanted to be near my son. I just wanted to hold him. I just wanted to not answer his questions because I was in shock. Some of you may or may not have heard of the story. It was a father who took his child's life in his own. And so, the school's calling and doing due diligence and letting us know. They dismissed early, canceled all programs, sent our kids home. So I went home to attend to my kids. And then all of my training and certification and all the things that I am, in that moment, none of that mattered. I just wanted to hold him. I myself wanted to be held because I didn't understand the whole concept of that. And then hearing you speak now, I remembered that because it was the most recent thing where I remember having that conversation with my own child about safety and, safe space in mind, body, and soul. Not just safe space is not just something physical in my experience and my understanding. And to hear the questions that his 15, 16-year-old mind was conceptualizing, and then providing support for the community and hearing the questions that the adults were having and the confusion. I just wanted to add to the conversation that safety is a contextual issue. What a 16-year-old, 15-year-old might consider to be the safest thing is not the same thing that an adult, I, will consider to be the safest space, the safest person, safest place. So I just wanted to lend my voice to that. On campus, Syracuse University, one of the things that we try to do as chaplains there at Hendrix is, well, let me speak for myself. In my chaplaincy, one of the things I do is to create safe spaces. I work a lot with the international student population, and that is students who left countries that some of us probably never visit, and they're here in this culture having this immersive academic experience. And so when America sneezes, we know that the whole world catches a cold, but they're here, right? They're not in their home countries, and they're having to make sense of things that they don't necessarily deal with at home, whether it's race, politics, whatever it is. And their sense of safety changes from what my sense of safety or your sense of safety is. So I just wanted to add that piece to the conversation about the contextual nature and or aspect of safety.
100%. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because you're right. It is completely different based on age, based on experiences, based on, and you made me think about it because I spent 10 years in Asia, and to go into, in so many ways, I'm beyond grateful for that experience, because it took me out of the small town that I grew up in here in Syracuse, and it transplanted me. My lens of the world just grew significantly. But I also couldn't make sense of why we did things here in the States that they didn't do in other countries. And I've had that experience, sort of that experience of a fish out of water, sort of like you completely throw yourself out of your comfort zone, and transplant you into a completely different culture. And it's like, okay, adapt. And so that's part of what adds to the story of safe spaces, because I came back here and I'm like, why do we do things the way we do? Right? Like you start to question those things, like, yes, because we've always done them, but it's not working, or it doesn't make sense. So what, but yeah. And I'm so sorry to hear that your son knew her. I had a few friends that they were very tuned into the community here. So story is just horrific. These kids are dealing with issues that we never had to. And what it's causing is them to grow up really quickly and to lose that idea of safety, right? Because they're experiencing real world problems that a lot of us were sheltered to until we got older, and could actually, our brains caught up to the fact that we could deal with it. These kids, their world like isn't safe. So creating these spaces is honestly the only thing I can think of until something larger starts to happen, but yeah, and thank you for adding that in.
Yeah, and I thank you for the work you do, just because I know how necessary it is now and how even more so it's going to be as the world really gradually and slowly opens up to vulnerability and taking the risk to be that way across the spectrum, from children to young adults to older adults to our aging population. I think the more, I like you think COVID had something to do with it, right? We all had this this extreme amount of time to really sit and reflect on our lives and things that perhaps, in the busyness of life, we did not get a chance to do. And so I find in my experience, especially a person who I consider myself one who has the experience of working across the spectrum, having my own kids, working on a university campus. Before coming into this community, I was in a hospital context. So I'm always in contact with the human spirit, if you want to put it that way. And I find a lot of people risk vulnerability more than perhaps pre-COVID days, right? Because I think something shifted within us that allowed us to see that, oh my God, you're scared, I'm scared. We're all scared, right? We found that common ground, which was fear of the unknown, and it somehow broke something. So I think we're onto something. And I think that practitioners like yourself, myself, perhaps everyone in this room, we practice caregiving in some kind of way for the human spirit. I think our work is becoming more seen, more valued, and more necessary in this particular context in society. So kudos to all of you for whatever part you play in bringing healing to our human family.
Thank you.
Tracy, how can we help you?
Oh. You guys help every day in your own way. Like that was just stated. We're all doing this just in a different way, right? We're all, and you brought up the word fear, which in my opinion, every day we have a decision, right? Do we live in fear? Do we live in love? Like, what are every choice is that, in my opinion. And so choosing to stay in love and express that and live from that in a world that is constantly in fear now, it is hard. And so building these communities is just a way to keep that momentum moving forward. But what can you do? You can say a prayer. No, you can. Really, we're just trying to get the word out. Right now, I don't think many people know of us. I think really just continuing to spread the word of what we're trying to do. And this is not just this is a community effort. And my goal is that the safe space becomes a place in a lot of communities. It might not look like for Syracuse, we have some of the worst numbers for mental health in any other city in New York State, right? And so to me, this model of a safe space gets molded based on the community that you're in and the issues that are really in the biggest demand. And so I hope that this becomes sort of a model, right, that can be used. But in doing so, we're breaking down a lot of stigma, right? We're breaking down this idea that people are broken or that people need help and meds and all of we're empowering the person, which is different than what's been out there. So I guess to answer your question, I don't have a simple response. I guess just helping us spread the word would be great.
If you ever find yourself wanting to come do work in the Mohawk Valley, let us know.
Okay, there you go. I would
We'll
love.
welcome you here.
Or even south of the Mohawk Valley.
Yeah,
And
where are you?
talking to us about how one gets started in creating safe spaces.
You know, I'm gonna write that down. I like that.
And Tracy, you're doing this across spectrum, correct? Or is
Yeah.
it just with our younger population?
It's across. We actually just started. It's everywhere. Yeah, it's every age, right?
Yeah.
It's every age. We just started doing some pop-ups in some of the local community centers here where we're targeting older, and with every age group, the language has to change, right? The modalities have to change because we have such beliefs around mental health. And for a lot, it's so ingrained that to be able to, you got to change the language up. You got to, make it okay for everybody. And so we've started with each population. We have yet to really get into the kid, we're starting to talk to Syracuse University and OCC about partnerships, because the idea of one mental health center with 10 therapists to support a whole campus is not it's not possible anymore, right?
This is true.
So we're starting those partnerships right now. We're kind of smack dab in the middle of the population is what we're targeting, and then as we build, we'll kind of spread our wings a little bit more. But to have sort of a way to create, I'll put that together, and I can kind of send out a little email. I can send out an email of what I think that would look like.
Just send it to me and I'll make sure the group
Okay.
gets it then.
That would be great. That'd be
Super.
great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for the work you guys are doing.
Thank you for being with us. We like to end with a blessing, and this one seems rather fitting given the work that you're doing. Come in as you are. You don't have to shine yourself up or polish off your grit. Make your brokenness a blessing. Never use it to harm or as a hardened defense. Come in to honor life, to learn and to teach. Transparency opens us, whereas hiding closes us. Pretending reveals nothing. The truth reveals everything. Welcome. Come in with all you have.
Okay,
That's beautiful.
that was good.
All right, friends, the Lord be with you.
And with you.
Okay, thank you again, Tracy.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye now.
You too. Bye.